right, you guys, another Monday, another video. And I do so apologize if you hear any sort of like light grunting or licking sounds in the background. I am currently watching a dog and doing this voiceover, and so that's just kind of the way it worked out. And I'm going to try really hard to make sure that those noises aren't too obstructive from the video. And in this one, I just kind of wanted to do something pretty lax. I wanted to do a Procreate painting revolving around the subject matter that I painted in my last sketchbook spread, which was of the muntjac deer, which are these really weird deer that have like these secretion glands that do all kinds of interesting things. And I wanted to take my favorite sketch from that spread and sort of use it as inspiration and a jumpstart to create a full-fledged painting. So, if that sounds like something you would enjoy, I'm Rory Fluent. Feel free to call me Rory if you're new around here. Hi, hello, how are you? Let me know in the comments down below. I like to create dope art content and hopefully curate a chill atmosphere. And if you're not new around here, what is up, my dudes? Let's get into this video. As you can see, we're starting off pretty quickly. I kind of jumped right into this one. I did the sketch in one go, and oftentimes you'll find, and I'm sure anyone who has been sort of with me for a little while now knows, that these Procreate videos come pretty easy to me. Like, you will even notice that comparatively to my sketchbook ones, they're not like, my hand isn't moving as fast and they're not as sped up, and that's because they just come a lot easier to me, and the creation process and my art process is much smoother in Procreate compared to traditional art. I sort of launched right into this one. I knew exactly what I wanted to do. It isn't necessarily the most, I would say, like, creative of my compositions. I feel like it's something I've done before, like in the, I redid a painting of some otters, and I think I did this sort of composition loosely, and I feel like I might have pulled from that painting, which I wouldn't say is as finalized as this one, and sort of brought that composition and the sort of way that I visually guided your eye through the page is very similar in this painting to that one. And so I kind of kept that in mind and felt the need to kind of bring it up and talk about it, because it's okay for, not every part of your painting to be wholly original and different from something else that you've painted, especially if you can recognize that and maybe target it and continue to grow in that in the future. So in my next Procreate painting, I'll probably try to do a different kind of landscape, like get out of doing woods, because I've been painting a lot of woods, I would say, and try not to do this whole, like, there's a large tree in the foreground or like the forefront of the middle ground, and you're sort of peeking in through these bushes. I feel like that's something I've done quite a lot, and I want to start straying away from that. With all of that being said, though, I do really like the way that this painting turned out. The colors were really vibrant. I love these rich oranges and yellows that I'm using. I was infatuated with the greens. Oh my god, there's something about those mossy, yellow-toned greens that I absolutely adore. I feel like they play really well with the yellow tones of the oranges and browns that I was using, and it makes the piece just very warm and welcoming and bright. As you can kind of tell, I didn't really have like a subject of this painting. Like, I suppose you would say that it's the deer, which obviously I haven't even started painting those yet, and that's because I kind of add them in. I choose to create like the foreground, middle ground, and background, and then sort of go in with the color work for the deer, because at that point I wasn't even super sure what color I wanted to make them, especially referencing that color palette that I had created before I started filming. I was a little bit avoiding them, and I feel like that was to my detriment. I do end up having to adjust the colors of the deer a little bit to make them make sense, because my first go at it wasn't the best. And if you've listened to me talk about my Procreate process before, you'll know that I'm a pretty big fan of like doing color analyses and color comps, and so on top of like doing different iterations of sketches and kind of honing in on the sketch that you want to use for a final painting, I really like creating small color comps and playing around with the colors. And I don't know why I didn't do that for this one. It just totally slipped my mind. I kind of was just almost on autopilot a little bit. That's why I kind of harkened back to the fact that I've almost created this composition before. I wouldn't say that this is my most experimental piece, but I did have a lot of fun creating it, and I did have a lot of fun with the subject matter of these muntjac deer once we eventually start actually getting to the point where I paint them. I guess if I had to choose a topic or something that I kind of wanted to reference while I was talking through this video, it would be the idea that we as artists kind of can go through ruts where we sort of fall back on the same tendencies, the same patterns, and into the same, I guess, just like ideas and compositions and you name it. And artists can kind of use them like crutches, like these different pieces of our means to create art. That is such a weird and obscure way of saying the word that I'm trying to look for, but I can't really like think about it at the moment or come up with the word that I'm looking for. I guess maybe I'm speaking of the elements that make our art, whether it be a finalized illustration or a sketchbook spread. I feel like as artists, sometimes we have like these comfort elements that we consistently go back to. Obviously, in this specific painting, I'm directly referencing the fact that I kind of went to a sort of comfort composition that I rely on, where I'm kind of just really mindlessly putting something in the foreground, almost like we're peeking in on a scene, and then we have a pretty simple receding background, and in this case, a couple subjects. And yeah, I definitely went into more detail with those subjects than I normally would in a painting, and I like that about this piece, and I like that there are things that are different about this piece. But some of the elements that make up the whole are sort of unoriginal, especially when it comes to my work, because they are practiced, and I sort of fell into this habit of, I'll just kind of throw these elements into this piece because they're easy, and they didn't require a lot of thought of me. And I don't even say that that necessarily takes away from the piece, but when I was done creating it, I looked at it and I felt like, again, going back to the composition, I've created this composition before. It's kind of the first thing that I thought when I took a step back. And it's not to say, again, that I don't really like this piece or that I think it's a better version of that composition or a better use of that composition, but I can do better, and I want to continue to keep in mind that I can do better and continue to push myself and experiment. And absolutely, you could say in a way that this was experimental, because normally I don't add as many details to the actual subject matter within my paintings. Like the deer, they're pretty small, they don't take up a large part of the composition, but they are where I'm trying to direct your eye, and I do that through color and contrast and, in a way, size, because they are so small compared to the large, these giant round trees that they are interacting with. And honestly, that's a fantastic segue into something else that I love about this piece, which is the fact that these deer are interacting with elements within the background. And I don't always do that, and I don't always, I feel like, effectively plant my subject matter within my pieces. Like, I'm not always sure it's believable that my subjects are actually within the backgrounds and, I guess, setting that I'm trying to create. And I think that in this painting, I successfully created an environment that is pretty believable and pretty interactive. But the composition is a bit more comfortable than I'd like it to be, and I think that I could have pushed that further and in a way that would be a little bit more engaging and a little bit more unique and, I don't know, like more helpful for me as an artist to promote growth. You know, if I had tried a more unique angle, say these trees are still sort of coming towards us in the foreground, getting larger and receding into the background, and there are still these bushes and these deer. But instead of it being such a straight head-on view of this scene, what if I was peeking from, I don't know, behind the largest tree? And so looking at this painting, I'm glad that I can sort of remove myself from it, take a step back, and understand that I have these different areas that I want to continue to push myself to grow in, and I don't want to fall into those artist ruts and continue using the same habits and, I don't know, lack and lose out on growth that I could otherwise push myself to grow into and away from and towards and in any direction that I want to. But when it comes to my art, I want to make sure that I am making these conscientious decisions. And I guess that's probably like the best way that I could put it. oftentimes, especially when I'm trying to focus too much on something, like in this case, the subject of the deer, I tend to lose and become less conscientious of the decisions that I'm making throughout the entire creative process of the piece, and I might fall into these habits that are not, I don't know, like not very original to myself. And I don't mean like original in comparison to other artists, but just in pieces that I've made. I feel that they are redundant, and I definitely don't want to be redundant in my art unless it's purposeful, say in like color palettes or the mood and feel of the different pieces that I'm trying to create. You know, I love when my art feels a little goofy, a little strange, a little weird. That's good redundancy, but bad redundancy is relying on the same composition over and over again and not pushing myself outside of that. So I guess in a way, this video is like a little PSA from me to you, to if you are an artist or actively creating artwork along with me, make sure that you're taking a step back, removing yourself and assessing your work and comparing it to the catalog of work and body of work that you have underneath of you, and make sure that you are growing in the areas that you've set out to grow in. You want to be, you know, intentional with your art, and that's something that I'm not always and haven't always been for sure, and kind of like is this subtle art goal that's just sort of always there in the back of my mind for me personally. I always want to be making conscious art decisions when I am creating a piece or a sketchbook spread, and it's greatly helped me in my sketchbook, which I know a lot of you are aware of. Lately I have loved my sketchbook spreads and really enjoyed the process of creating them, and that has made like the outcome also look better. And so like I've focused on what my goal is when creating these sketchbook spreads and what I want them to look like and be and feel and the vibe. And I've picked out these specific goals that I have and these specific facets of the sketchbook that I want to be able to create. And in doing so and in making these in making these conscious decisions, there we go, we got there eventually, I feel like my sketchbook spreads have been coming out very intentional and very much the way that I intend them to, and that has been very inspiring and very cool. Even if, you know, like with this last spread with the muntjac deer, I wasn't necessarily happy with the spread, but I was happy that I was continuing to create these sketchbook spreads in the same ways that I have been creating the ones that have turned out really good. You know, I have like this idea of, I don't know, how I want to go about these spreads and how I want them to look, and that helps me to create spreads that even when I don't like them, they're maybe not something that I necessarily want to cover up. And now I feel like I'm starting to ramble a little bit, especially about the sketchbook spread. I feel like I lost my point somewhere in there, but I hope that somebody gleaned a nugget of something out of that. Returning to the video for a moment, another thing that I feel like I sort of have this bad art habit at the moment of doing is just sort of throwing in my lighting. And it's not that I don't necessarily like think about my lighting, because I do, and you'll see that as this piece progresses, the contrast is something I was really focusing on in creating this sort of like very stark light and dark contrast, and very specifically focusing on my lighting. But like the way that I depicted the lighting, I felt was kind of lazy. It was very much something that I've done before. I was using this blocky brush, this blocky textured brush, which I do like, and I don't mind continuing to use, and it even being a staple in the way that I create lighting. But I felt like I was using it in a very lazy way, and I don't know, I feel like the lighting could have been pushed a bit more. I appreciate that by the end of the video, I alter the colors a little bit and sort of finesse that and make that a little bit more unique and experimental, but I think that the lighting as a whole could have, done more for the piece overall. This is also the part in the video, though, where I begin to work on the deer, and I was sort of starting to integrate this reddish, like mauve-y hue to the piece. It definitely needed something else, like the greens and the yellows and browns were sort of like fading together a little bit, and while I liked the warmth that it was bringing, and I wanted to continue to sort of make the piece very warm, and I didn't necessarily want there to be any contrast between cool and warm temperatures within the painting. I had to kind of finesse this pinky color a little bit to make it, I don't know, like fit with the way that I had envisioned it in my head, and I felt like, you know, there needed to be more of this pinky color in a way throughout the piece so that it wasn't so stark and the contrast wasn't so crazy with that pink color, the color contrast anyways, that I don't know, it wasn't just like a glaring mistake. You know, it needed to be intentional that these deer were maybe the color that they were and drawing your eye in the way that they are. Which also leads me to being able to talk about the like grass and like the ground that they're standing on, because I was really, really happy with the grass. That's another thing that I did that I was kind of overwhelmed by a little bit and focusing on and really just kind of honing in on the ground and making it, I don't know, like look like ground and look like the things on top of it were interacting with it, and that it just was like a thing existing in this space, in this setting with these deer and these trees. And I feel like I did a pretty good job of that. I love the texture. Like, oh my God, I don't think I'll ever be able to fucking give up the like crazy, interesting and intricate textures that you can get by trying to create like a grassy area. Which is another thing, you know, all of this is kind of flowing together really nicely, but my texture, you know, I started to get a little overwhelmed by the amount of texture that I was adding to the piece, and I wanted to try and take some away and figure out like what I don't know, like I didn't want to fall into a bad habit of just overusing texture. And so I tried to make the deer very simple comparatively to the rest of the painting, so that way they would stand out also in use of being flatter and less textured than the rest of the painting. Even getting the small glimpses of like when I shrink the painting down on Procreate, looking at that color contrast of the deer makes me very happy. I really like the pink and the way that it's interacting with the environment, and you'll see that I start to kind of integrate it a little bit into the lighting, and I feel like that was pretty successful in allowing the pink to persist beyond just that one deer while also continuing the focal point on the deer. And I loved this goofy guy laying on the ground, like itching his butt on a tree. I had such a fun time drawing these deer, and they came very naturally and easy to me, but not in a way that felt lazy. And it was really refreshing and nice to be able to just draw something very simple in Procreate and have it not look, in my opinion, too simple or too not well thought out, if that makes sense. These deer are intentionally simple, I guess, is what I'm trying to get at. And I felt like that came across, and it really ended up working in a way that I was a pretty big fan of. Honestly, watching this back now, though, I think I might regret making the like pink deer a darker color. I know I go in and kind of edit some things, so I'm gonna kind of reserve those thoughts until the very end, but I don't know. I feel like I may have made a little bit of a mistake in making that deer so dark. I feel like I lose him a little bit in the rest of the painting, but I'm hoping that I do go in and I believe I lighten him a little bit and add some of those lighter pinks, and obviously line work always helps. Oh my God. I mean, the difference that line work makes in a painting is kind of a miracle sometimes, in my opinion anyways. And you can see here I am now sort of starting to edit that deer. I really liked this like deep maroony color that was happening. There was something just very lively about it that I really enjoyed, but it needed to be brightened up a little bit. So I went in with some of those oranges, and I was trying to kind of hit a good balance, I guess, of like the different colors interacting with each other within the piece. You know, I didn't want everything to blend together and to have, I don't know, nothing stand out through color, because obviously I was trying to make the deer stand out through color, but I didn't want to add too much of that orange to the deer and then lose that contrast. And so I was kind of battling that the whole time and trying to figure out exactly what I was doing and what I was trying to do with the different color work. And I don't know, at some point during the sketching process, I had added a few other deer in the background, and I just went ahead and decided that I really wanted to just focus on these two deer. And I know in a previous painting where like this small puffy like sheep is looking up at this large tree going up into the sky, I sort of insinuated that there were other sheeps by just like these rough color blobs. And I thought about and considered doing that, but I really thought that there was enough going on in the background that I did not need to add more to the chaos. And, you know, even kind of looking at it now, I feel like it might be a little bit of a textured mess back there, but, oh, I forgot that I ended up like really amping up that contrast in the woods to sort of continue to amplify the difference between light and dark within the woods. And I definitely think that helps quiet some of the chaos anyways. So with all of that being said and this final look at my piece, I hope that you guys enjoyed this pretty rambly video. I guess I just had a lot of thoughts about sort of like not getting stuck in the same art habits and trying to hold myself accountable so that way you guys can kind of see and understand that it is something that we can identify within ourselves, and if we get good at identifying the things that we, I guess, settle into and the different habits that we tend to gravitate towards, we can pull ourselves out of them and hopefully make ourselves better artists. As always, thank you so much for watching and staying to the end of this video. If you want to, do the YouTubey things like comment and subscribe. If you don't know what to comment, comment algorithm. And hopefully I will get to talk to you in the next one. Bye!